Niigaanwewidam Sinclair. It's an honor to be here. My name is Niigaan Sinclair. Anishinaabe and Bungi, Peguis and Donchi. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be with you from Treaty 1 territory, right here in Manitoba. I know you're all off there in the Mississauga of the New Credit territory and the Dish with One Spoon territory. So I just want to say a big miigwech to all of you for doing this hard work and coming to the Jack Summit and just working so hard. I got to hear a little bit of the last session, and so it's just a nice honor to be here. As I mentioned before, my name's Niigaan. I'm Anishinaabe, and I'm a professor at the University of Manitoba and a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press. And I also am on the CBC, a whole bunch of different shows, platforms, namely Power and Politics. And so it's nice to be here. I don't want to waste any more time. I want to get right into what I want to talk about for today. You are at a pivotal moment as an organization. All of you are at this kind of critical juncture for Jack in the ways in which we're reflecting upon the growth of the organization. And what does that mean? What it means to think about where we have come from, where we are going. What is it that this organization would like to look like in the future? And how can you, as both participants, activists, mentors, different ways in which you've been involved with the organization, can help the growth and take the next step for what it will be a very interesting moment for this country, our communities, particularly for young people, when we have emerged from two of the most hardest years, certainly in my life, probably in your life, in that we have emerged from a pandemic, a global pandemic. We are continuing to emerge from that. There's likely a few more waves yet to come, but we are in a point in which we're finally getting outside and seeing people and spending time with others. So we are rediscovering ourselves in so many different ways and rediscovering our relatives. You know, as Anishinaabe people, Indigenous people from your territory. Our nation is so big. It covers all of Ontario, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Manitoba, Ontario, Northwestern Ontario, and then, of course, Saskatchewan. You know, all of our different relatives that are in your territory and in this one. We tell a story. And this story is every time we reach a critical juncture or a difficult decision, we tell this story. This is our Giche Atazukonik, which is our big story, our big creation story. And it tells us about everything we need to know about our future. And it might seem a little bit weird. Why do we talk about the past when we are thinking about the future? Well, you'll understand that in just a moment. This story involves you, though. Keep an eye out for yourself, because you are a part of the Anishinaabe creation story as well. You know, as Anishinaabe people, Ojibwe people, also known as Saulteaux, Bungi, Chippewa, as Ojibwe people, as Anishinaabe people, we tell a story about a time before time. I want you to think about that for just a moment. How many things in your life are determined by time? Well, I want to take that away for a moment. I want you to imagine a world with no time. What would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it smell like? What would it be like to never be late? To never be on time either? What would it be like to have no time? Well, the creation story begins that way. It begins in a time before time, in a time in which nothing existed. But yet, nothing is still something. And that's the contradiction or complexity, or what we'll call it, the Manado, the Giche Manado. The Giche Manado is what we call the great mystery. And in many ways, it is a similar idea in several different ideas and faiths and nations throughout the world. Some call him God, some call her the great being, the great creator, whatever it might be. But for us, it is simply the great mystery. We don't know truly what this being is or was, but we have an answer to that at the end. Now, when Giche Manado was in existence, it was only her. She was the only being that existed until one day a sound occurred for the very first time. And this sound was like the sound of or like your knuckles coming together. I want you to try that. If you're sitting there right now, listen to the way your knuckles come together. If you're ever in ceremony and you hear a shaker, that's what that sounds like. It sounds like things coming together. Now, when that sound was made, there was a very brief moment in which Niigaanwewidam turned her eyes and looked towards that sound and saw something for the very first time, a tiny little thing, a tiny little light, a tiny little space. And so she went and she looked over, just like a pebble falling in the water, that little circle, and she looked over like this. And she was taken aback from her breath. Her breath was completely taken from her body, because for this first moment, she saw the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen in her entire life. And you might be wondering what that beautiful thing is. It was an Xbox 360. No, it wasn't an Xbox 360. It was a beautiful set of flowers. No, it wasn't that either. Do you know what it was? It was you. It was you. It was also you, way there in the back. It was you. She saw you. The most amazing thing is she saw you right now at the Jack Summit in Toronto, sitting there amongst your friends, amongst your colleagues, amongst your mentors. And she saw you right now, but she didn't just see you now. She also saw you now and now and now. She saw you at the beginning of your life and at the end of your life. She saw every single part of you. You know what she saw? She saw those great, amazing successes that you had in your life. She also saw the great failures. And she also saw, you know, those things that you don't like to tell anyone about? That thing that you did that you're kind of embarrassed? That thing that you did that you don't want anyone to know about? Well, she saw that too. But yet she still saw you as the most beautiful possible being, a being full of layers and complexity and achievements, and yes, all of those mistakes as well. Because that's what makes you beautiful, all of those different parts, not just the parts we like to put on plaques and awards, but the parts that truly make us who we are. And so Niigaanwewidam saw you right now, and she said, oh, this is an incredible gift. What an incredible gift. You know what we do with a gift? Here's the thing about gifts, and I'm going to tell you a little secret about life. There is no such thing as a gift without strings. Every gift you're ever going to be given in your entire life, there's going to be an expectation behind it, or a requirement, or like somebody offers you a cup of tea. What do they expect you to do? Drink it. Someone offers you their hand or a name. What do they expect to do? Well, you have to use it. Shake the hand to tell your name. When everyone tells you a story and they say, oh, this is my day that I had and I did this and this, they always at the end say, and you? What did you do? Because it's now your job to do something when you receive a gift. Every gift, or what we refer to in our language as a bagajinan. A bagajinan means that you have an obligation. You have an obligation to build a relationship. And so what Niigaanwewidam realized in seeing you right now and now and now is that you were a gift and that she had to do something. And she realized that it was her obligation to make you. And so Niigaanwewidam did. But she couldn't just make you randomly and put you in the middle of nothing, because you were surrounded by something. Many things, in fact. All of those things that made you who you are, all of those experiences, all of those people, your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors, the earth and the sky and the trees and the birds and the fish and the air and the directions, all of those things. And so what she did is she set forth to make creation. She made creation each part. She made it all in a row until this beautiful, beautiful sight where everything that was once nothing but was still something, became even more than something. And now it became something and nothing. All things together in a beautiful creation. And then she realized that it was like a big painting. So she had to start movement. So she picked up everything and blew into it like this. The sun, and the sun began to move for the first time. The moon sent the moon forth and moved for the first time. Because she couldn't make creation for you until things had begun motion, till you too had to become a part of that motion. And finally, she made you. And as she made you, she blew into you the most beautiful gifts, life. And with that life came all the parts of who you would be, all of those parts which were before told, all of those things that made you who you are, all of those things that make you make decisions, that make you feel love, that make you come to the Jack Summit. And all of those things then began to be created. And finally, today, on this day, you turned to creation, to your friends, to your mentors, to your colleagues, and you asked the question, how did we get here? What happened? How did we get to this place right now? And you closed your eyes and you saw that story. You heard that story from me. And that it was planned for you to be here to hear that creation story. Because every time the Anishinaabe want to make a decision, like to enter a treaty, or to trade, or to war, or to have people marry, or to have a ceremony, or every single time we as a people for tens of thousands of years have had to make decisions, we've told that story. We've told that story which tells of our creation, of Gege Manido, seeing us as beautiful beings, not of yesterday, but of now, tomorrow. Now, you may ask yourself, how can we tell a creation story? How can we divide and devise and imagine that creation story, not just of yourself, but of this organization and of this place and of this time that you are in? Because it's not just Jack.org that you're trying to build here. It's also yourselves. You're trying to make yourself in many ways since this terrible sickness. You know, we as Anishinaabe have thousands of stories of sicknesses. We've been facing epidemics here in North America for tens of thousands of years. Our very first stories, in fact, are about sickness. They're about division. They're about violence. And how is it that those sicknesses can be overcome? Those are the worst epidemics of all. The worst epidemics are things like racism. The worst epidemics are things like child abuse. The worst epidemics are things like murder, missing Indigenous women and girls. Because those are the sicknesses in which we see so many causes. We get overwhelmed and turn, what can we do? What can we do? And as Indigenous people, as Anishinaabe peoples, the same solution always comes towards us. It always ends in the same solution. It is not our job to turn away from one another, but to turn towards, to share our medicines more, to spend more time thinking of one another and working for one another, to give our gifts, our bagajinan, more than ever. Don't abandon yourself at a time of an epidemic, or a time of a pandemic. A time of sickness is the time in which we should turn more towards each other. And yes, socially distance, wear masks, all that kind of stuff, get vaccinated. But the most important thing is to deliver those medicines to each other, to think of one another, to care for one another, to act as if you do that in every different way. Because it's when we care for one another that we become the healthiest and the safest of all. And so I want to, as a relative, as an uncle, as a brother to you all, I want to offer you the possibility now to tell your creation story. And for you to be able to tell the creation story of why you are here. And by doing that, invite yourself into a journey in which we can not only be together and when we defeat this pandemic, but that we can also be together to defeat anything together, to come together to build peace, kindness, and generosity, and to maybe even one day have this society in which reconciliation is possible between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. We are not anywhere near there yet, my friends, because there is much land still yet stolen. There is still much violence and poverty and genocide still taking place. And there is still many answers still yet to be uncovered in the different ways in which we have to learn to one another and to share territories and relationships with one another. Here's how we do that. I want you all to answer these 4 questions in your head and then perhaps with each other in the future. I want you to ask yourself these questions and then most importantly, turn to someone beside you and ask that question as well. Ask them after this session, maybe during a break, maybe it's late night when we're visiting, maybe it's through emails. Whatever it is that you ask. The very first question is, where do I come from? I want you to ask yourself that. Where do you come from? I want you to think of things like your name and how your name draws you to a place, because every name connects you to a place and a people and a time. I want you to ask yourself, who are those who made you? Who are those who gave you gifts to be to these people? How far back can you remember? Who are those who influenced those people? Did they have contacts with others? Did they eat food? Did they drink water? Did they live in a place where beautiful, bountiful territories or mountains or sand or water was? What did they do there? What are all the things that led them to this moment? Now, what you're doing in your head right now is you are filling these beautiful images and places and times. You are telling that story. You are talking about yourself. You are placing yourself at the very end of that story, just like the Anishinaabe do, where finally now I want you to produce motion. I want you to give it a living picture, bring it to life, because these aren't just static pictures, paintings that we're talking about. These are living beings. What was the best part of your parents? What was the worst part of your grandparents? What were all the things that your people did that were amazing and great? And what were the things that all of your people did that weren't so great? What were the things that they achieved? What were the things that they made mistakes with? And I want you to think of all of those things that have led you to this moment. Niigaanwewidam Sinclair, which is a beautiful phrase for us, which means, I am amazed that we are here. Niigaanwewidam, I'm joyous. Niigaanwewidam Ayayin. Oma Ayayin. Oma for being here. Ayayin, all the things that have brought us here. Niigaanwewidam Oma Ayayin. And as we have looked to one another right now in this place, all of those things have led you to this moment. I want you to think for just a moment that all it would have taken was one different thing, either this morning when you got up, or yesterday when you traveled to Toronto, or the year from a year ago when you decided to go this way instead of that way, or your parents decided to do this and that and they finally met, or your ancestors decided to travel for across a faraway lands and end up in this place. All it would have taken was one thing, and you would not be here. But yet, it's amazing. It's a miracle that you're here. And then you've answered the question, where do I come from? The next question is, where are you going now? Now, these are questions that don't just involve your body. You know, we often think, oh, well, we're heading in this direction. You know, we don't just travel with our bodies. We also travel with our hearts. I want you to think of the ways in which you send feelings out to people, especially when they're suffering. I want you to offer that love to that person right now. I want you, each one of you, to think of somebody who's suffering right now, and I want you to send your love to that person. I want you to think of someone who you're very thankful for, who's been given you this incredible gift, who's living right now, or maybe they've passed on. Either way, they're still around you. Send that great feeling and that thanks to them. And I want you to think now of somebody who's harmed you, who's hurt you. And I want you to offer them the feeling that you need to offer to them right now. Sometimes that's forgiveness. Sometimes that's anger. Whatever it is that you need to offer to that person, I give you the permission to give that gift to that person through your heart. Now, what I want you to do is we also travel with our mind. When we sleep at night, we travel all over the world. Imagine all the dreams that you have. But we don't just do that. I want you to imagine yourself in 5 years. Do it in your head right now. Do you see it? You just traveled with your mind. We call that a vision. You've now received a vision. And that vision is yourself finishing university, becoming a dentist, going off and becoming that CEO, going off and doing all the amazing volunteer work and leading our communities as a professional or a personal way, whatever it might be. The fourth way that we travel, we also travel with our spirits. Our spirits are sent out all the time. We travel oftentimes, the most powerful spiritual journey is when we pass away. When we pass away, we go somewhere, right? We We travel to that place. Even atheists, people who don't believe in religion, often say that we become energy. We go back to being molecules. And the defining feature of molecules is that they always move. Even people who don't believe in things we might call religion, even they say that we move with our spirit. We move with our energy. We move with our essence, right? With our true selves. All of those answers I've just led you on is where you are going. The second question of your creation story. Number 3, I want you to ask yourself, why are you here? What's your purpose in being at this summit? What's your purpose in where you are in your life right now? In your studies, in your relationship with your siblings or your parents or your family? Where are you right now? Where are you in this place? Look around. Smell all the smells, touch all the touches, feel all the feels. I want you to ask yourself, what's the purpose for this moment, this time? And if you ask yourself what it is that I'm doing here right now, then you've arrived at the 4th question. And the most important question of all, because it leads you back to the first question, which is, who am I? When you ask the question, who am I? You are answering it already. You've arrived at the future. By asking yourself, who am I? You are beginning the stage of building that future, painting all of the colors inside of the lines, building yourself into that vision. And what you've done is you looked around, and this beautiful creation, which has now built you into the most beautiful being that you possibly can be, can take a step. Whatever direction you want. That's your choice. That's your power, is that you can choose this direction or that direction or that direction. And as you choose that direction, you have created your future. And that's the power that you have. All of those things that have made you who you are, the most beautiful being as foretold by all of your ancestors, your family members, you are now a part of this remarkable, beautiful space right here, in this space, and now you're to take a step. Where is your step going? What direction are you choosing? Where would you like to go? And as Jack.org asks you some questions to say, where are we going in all of this? Where have we come from? Where are we going? How is it that we got here to this place? And most importantly, how can we make a future? I want you to think of that, and I want you to be kind. I want you to forgive yourself if you're thinking, why have I not done this before? Or you might ask yourself, maybe I should do this again tomorrow? I want you to accept that this today was your opportunity to be able to imagine yourself. And like tens of thousands of people in these territories, for generations and millennia, you are a part of this place which is connected to people who have done this journey for many, many times in lodges and ceremonies with sand teachings. And now here you are in Toronto, the place and the dish with one spoon in which you have the opportunity to offer that baggage and none now to someone else. Now, remember that when you speak to someone else about what you did for today, you're going to offer them to that in some kind way. You're going to say, this was the idea that I had during Niigaan session, or this was the vision that I had when I saw myself in 5 years, and now I realized something really pivotal. These are gifts. We all know that gifts don't come without strings. Your job is now to fulfill these visions, to do something with it. We won't all become dentists, but we may start the journey of learning about what it is in that vision of becoming a dentist that led me to my next career or my next step, because you now have an obligation. And that obligation is to pick up and fulfill that gift that's been offered to you. And now when you offer that gift to somebody else, they will then return one to you. And when they return that to you, they'll tell it to you. So listen, learn, because you may then be asked to give another gift back to them. And then the vision process begins again. The creation story begins again. The story of you, which the future has arrived, will continue to rebuild over and over and over again. That's treaty. That's what treaty is, my friends. That's also what it is to be a person in this beautiful place named by Indigenous peoples: Kanata, Manitowabo, Ontario, Odawa. These places named by Indigenous peoples were meant for you to be here. They're meant to you to be a part of these relationships in this place. But it is your abilities to live up to the very visions and the stories and the gifts that have been offered to you that will determine our future, that will determine the ways in which we can act better than the ways we've been inherited, that we won't build a future of Indian acts, of over incarceration or child welfare systems or murder missing Indigenous women and girls, but it will be a future in which justice will prevail, where equity will thrive, where community, reciprocity, mutual beneficial identities and communities, sharing of the land will take place. That's what I hope for all of you. And so I want to offer you that gift for today. And I want to say to you that here at the summit, you are doing important, valuable work. It's heard from way over here in Treaty 1 territory, hundreds of miles away. I wish I could be there to shake all of your hands and to give you a high five and to tell you all a really important message. It is Gizagin, which is oftentimes in Anishinaabe, it's used to describe love. But we don't really have a word for I love you. What we have is we have a word which means gizagin, gi, which means you, zagadiwin or zagin, which is the word of open. Right. So when we say I love you in Ojibwe, we really don't say I love you. That's a very kind of non-native way of thinking about it. I've chosen to love you. Instead, it is gizagin. You have opened me. And so you have all opened me by listening to me for today, by doing this incredible work in mental health and well-being for all of our peoples. And you've opened my heart today by being so brave at your different stages of your life and choosing to build community as much as yourselves. And so I say a big miigwech to all of you. I wish I could have been there, but I send my tremendous love and respect to all of you. So miigwech, everybody. And I think there's maybe a comment or Q&A or something like that. So I'm happy to stick around for all of that. But I hand it back over to the control and to our hosts.
Much for sharing yourself with us today. I know personally it has allowed me, your talk has allowed me to reflect my place within the universe, my place within my own community, and the place within my own heart. So deep appreciation. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to turn it over to our Hop-In delegates first to start asking questions in the Q&A, and we'll give you some time to do that while we turn to our in-person delegates to gather some questions if you have any questions for our keynote speaker at this time.
Yes.
Comments are good too.
Yeah, you bet.
Oh, here we go. We got a question. Alexandra says, what are some of the things in your life that helped you to determine who you are or where you are going?
Probably the most pivotal and important thing that's happened in my life is as an Indigenous person, I've inherited this incredible violent legacy of being a part of a country that's been built on hatred of my people, theft of my lands, and most importantly, the ongoing perpetuation of that system. And so in many ways, I've been defined by violence. And, when I grew up in Manitoba, for example, my community in 1907, well before I was born, we were forced off the land by gunpoint by Canadian forces, by the RCMP, so that farmers could take our land. And we were forced to move up north and leave our homes. But the one thing that brought me back to where I ended up growing up, which was on our home territory, but we were harassed by police for many years until finally we could afford to buy some territory, was my grandfather, who worked hard as a fisherman. He made pennies, and the family was very poor. My father, in fact, they had one wood stove in the house, and he'd have to go collect water down the river there and on the creek. And my grandfather saved up money so that he could buy a tiny little plot of land at our former site of our reserve, which is kind of terrible on one level to think that he had to buy his own land back. But that's been a spirit that's always driven me, and that's why I was where I was. It took me many years to learn that story. And my great-grandfather, who worked very hard as a fisherman to buy that land back, it's always been a spirit of resilience that has shown me where to go as an Anishinaabe, to be very proud of who I am. And many people have helped me along the way. My mother, a non-Native woman, has told me to always believe in myself. My father took me to ceremonies at the lodge from a very young age. And then, of course, I went off to become a teacher, and then later a PhD student, and then later a professor. Now I'm a person on TV in the news. All because of these people who believed in me along, and I've saved up my pennies over the years. And last week, I bought my own land back. I bought my own plot at my own territory. And I did that because, I can't wait for the government to give that land back to us. I worked very, very hard to buy a tiny little part for my family back, right near where my great-grandfather originally lived, where he ended up having to sell that land due to poverty as well. But finally, we were able to buy some of that back in order for us to have a place to live and for us to have our own territory back. And so I would say that's a big part of my where I've come from and where I'm going. Miigwech.
Question next, I believe. Where was the question? Did we find it? I thought I saw one. I'm sorry. That's my bad.
All right.
Let's see if we have any more hop-in questions. This is your time to ask anything that you would like to ask people in the room, people on Hop-In. Oh, we do have one there.
Amazing.
Okay, so from Nora, do you have any recommendations for books, films, podcasts, people, or stories that we can engage with more to continue our journey of learning, especially by Indigenous people?
Great question.
Okay, well, that's a big list, sir, so I'll do the best I can. So books, anything by Leanne Simpson is amazing and inspiring. And I think that she's one of the greatest writers in living history. If you want a graphic novelist, David Robertson is amazing. I just finished Jesse Wente's new book, but anything by Tanya Talaga is also amazing too. She talks a lot about Thunder Bay, but she also, there's different people who appear in newspapers like Willow Fiddler, who's, I believe, at the Globe, or she's at the Toronto Star. I think it's Toronto Star. Indigenous reporter. So that's a whole bunch of sort of writing materials that you can read. Like I said, graphic novels. I'm a big graphic novel person, so you can check out some of my writings if you want. And films. There's an amazing film. It's a zombie film, but it's really about now. And it's called Blood Quantum, and it's an amazing film that created by Indigenous peoples. There's also an amazing TV series called Reservation Dogs, which is amazing. There's also tons of amazing YouTube videos you can check out there, which show a lot of Indigenous humor. So watch anything by the 1492s, or there's just anything on YouTube, frankly, that, is produced by, let's say, APTN. What I tell everybody is watch 30 minutes of APTN once in a while. And here's why. Watch CBC and then watch APTN on the same day. Spend half an hour watching each, or 10 minutes or something. What you'll notice is that they are radically different newscasts. They tell different stories. They have different interests. And that gives you a little glimpse into what it's like to be an Indigenous person in this country. I mean, we aren't defined by the stories always that Canada tells. And we are interested in other stories, and often stories about our own relatives and the violence in our communities, and the ongoing treatment that we've experienced by government and so on. I missed the other question, so I don't remember what the other listing of them are, but I'll say a few other of them here. Poetry is amazing. Billy Ray Belcourt's really amazing. Josh Whitehead is also an amazing writer as well. These are all just writers that lately, I've just been really inspired by all the different people who are writing nonfiction, like writing their life stories. And so there's some amazing people out there. Richard Van Camp has been doing some great stuff. He's a Chalicho writer. Of course, Thomas King continues to be great, and all the different writers and thinkers that are out there that are, but I can't recommend enough a new book by a good friend of mine with I believe it's Penguin, I think, and his name is Clayton Thomas Mueller, and his story is called Life in the City of Dirty Water, I think. And so it's a story about growing up in Winnipeg, but it's a story really about growing up as an Indigenous person. There's a little bit of violence in there, but there's a lot of discovering of sexuality, a lot of discovering of yourself and your own place within the universe, becoming a father, becoming a good uncle. It's a really great book. There's also lots of digital stuff that goes with that book too. There's a documentary as well. Now, those are just a few selections that come to mind of books that you can pick up. And I think I focus more on books there, but anything by Hallucination, if you want any music, is just amazing too. Boogie the Beat's great. Leonard Sumner is amazing. Anything by Lindsay Equal Knight. I love music. If you want to check out a really amazing singer, check out Rhonda Head, who is a opera or classical singer, but she puts Cree elements into her music. It's just amazing. And I'm probably missing a whole bunch of amazing people as well, but those are just a few different sources you can get started with.
To access, and those are some great lists. I actually have a question for you in the spirit of Next 10. I would like to ask you, where do you see the Indigenous community and the mental health? Do you have any goals, hopes for the next 10 years? What do you envision? What do you see?
Well, the fact is that no one perhaps has experienced the kind of trauma and ongoing trauma that Indigenous peoples have experienced due to the violence, the theft of territory, the fact that we still live in a society in which to be Indigenous is much to be a second-tier citizen or to be not even existence. The reason why we do territorial acknowledgements as an example is we're often just saying that because we need to see Indigenous peoples and act differently as a result. So territorial acknowledgements, however, don't result in returning stolen land. So territorial acknowledgements are only one step in the process. And so we need to make many more. What I would say is that because of all the trauma that continues to happen within our communities, we have to be mindful that we have to have trauma-informed care. We have to be kind, be as generous as possible when working with Indigenous peoples, because we're at a point in which we are still in a recovery and revitalization phase for our languages, for our communities, for our nations, our governments. And so in many ways, we're making strides and bigger strides than ever before. There's, for instance, at the university that I work at, there's more Indigenous peoples there than any other time in history, getting university degrees, becoming social workers, nurses, teachers, all these kind of things. The college just down the street from us, more business owners, educational assistants, people who are working in creative communications or writing press releases for organizations. There's more Indigenous peoples in these kind of places than ever before. So there's lots of reason to have hope, but we still have disproportionate amount of violence in our community, an overwhelming amount of young people in prisons, boys and girls, an overwhelming amount of children in the child welfare system. And all of that ties back to history, residential school, the fact the Indian Act is still here. So what I would say is that you need to become aware and cognizant of what it's like to experience trauma. But then those of you who are Indigenous and hearing this message out there, know that you are loved and you are not alone. I am a first. My father was a first. All of us are first in some way. For some Indigenous peoples, you will be the first from your community to do something, the first from your family to do something. And that means that walking into those spaces is hard. There's many reasons for you not to be there. There's lots of beliefs and stereotypes that have led you that will create obstacles for you. But just know that we're all making it through it and you're not alone. We are all in this together, and that we need non-Indigenous allies to stand with us when we're going that and be culturally competent and to become aware and to help stand beside when we are going through our struggles. But most importantly, that we need to listen to Indigenous voices twice as much. We need to make sure that Indigenous voices are at every stage of an organization, not just in the entry level, but in the upper admin, in the leadership roles within our communities, all of our communities. And most importantly is that we need to see a future. We need to enact a future like we do when we do a territorial acknowledgement, say, oh, we see everybody, but then we need to commit to action to bring that forward. It is the exact same creation story that I talked about at the beginning. We have to see the future, realize it's a gift, to enact it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We are going to go to one more question from Hopin, and this question's from Linda. And she asks, when you experience so much systemic hate that surrounds you and what feels like very little progress, how do you feed hope and optimism when you are surrounded by so much draining effort, darkness, and doubt?
Well, luckily, I have the most optimistic person in the entire universe, my daughter, who always sees the positive side of things. And so whenever I need kind of an uplift, I feel that. But you know what helps me a lot is I often think to myself, you know, sometimes I think life's real tough. But you know what's real tough? Like getting up in the morning and getting water in the creek, coming to the stove, starting the stove. You know, those are all things my father did. You know, all the things that my father did growing up is that he had to experience a father himself that was an alcoholic and that would threaten and try to hurt him. And, you know, my father also experienced a tremendous amount of racism when he was a lawyer. There was no other Indigenous lawyers around. And so one time the judge, he walked in the courtroom and the judge said to him, where's your lawyer? And he's like, I am the lawyer. And so what I'm trying to say is that every time I think that things are tough for me, I think back to the things that have brought me to this place, good, bad, great, ugly, all the things that I've experienced in my life. And I have tremendous hope because I'm surrounded by remarkable people who love me. I go to ceremonies where I'm again surrounded by remarkable, beautiful people. And that when I'm in my best shape, and not every day is the best day, but when I'm in my best shape, that I feel proud of myself. And we all carry as Indigenous peoples shame, meaning we have this little voice in our head which tells us we're not good enough. And that's from policies of Canada and beliefs in society and movies that tell us that we need non-Native people to save us. That's like Dances with Wolves or the movie Avatar, if you ever see it. Like we have all these movies that tell us that we're never good enough. And so I have that little voice in my head sometimes that tells me that. Sometimes the volume is really loud. And when I'm at my best, I can turn the volume off on that little voice and get it down to the level 1 where it's still there. It never leaves me, but I can turn it down in that I can control it enough that I say, no, look at this amazing life that I have, this amazing place that I'm in. And whether it be in my work or whether it be in my writing or whether it be just walking down the street, when I'm holding hands with my daughter, or I'm smelling the beautiful trees in my neighborhood, or when I'm seeing the sunrise, right? I'm at the ceremony of seeing the sunrise ceremony. That's when I feel tremendous optimism and hope and possibility. It's hard to see that in a world of war. It's hard to see that in a world of racism. It's hard to see those things when you're experiencing violence firsthand, like I have in my life and others have as well. But I've never been defined by those experiences. What I've always been shown by every single one of them is that the sun will rise, the smells and the trees will continue to grow and produce those smells, and that the air will continue to breathe and feed me full of that life so that I can give that to people like my daughter and others like yourself today. So big miigwech, and thank you very much, everybody, for your time. So much love to all of you. Gizagin, Akanigana, Gigawadman Menawa, for all of you for this space and for this time that you've given me in your love. You know, the greatest gift we can give to each other is time. And if any of you ever have anybody leave your life, whether they pass away or they travel somewhere far away or they just take leave of you for a while, like during a pandemic, you really know that time is the only gift that we really have to give one another. That's the only gift that really matters. It is the most beautiful gift of all, and you've given me that today. So miigwech, everybody.